So a little bit about me. I know quite a few of you, but a lot of you as well I don't know. So I'm Wiz. I'm the founder of WIZZ&CO, which is a brand and retail strategy agency. I've worked for the last 20 years in retail. Previously, I was head of buying at Selfridges. I was there for 12 amazing years. I started out in fashion, worked in accessories and lifestyle, and latterly was head of beauty buying. I've worked with some major retailers with my consultancy business, such as Ocado, Next, Sainsbury's and Fenwick. I also spent a year and a half as sales director for Cowshed and Soho Home at the Soho House Group, where I traded and managed buyer relationships with retailers such as John Lewis, Liberty, Space NK. And I now support global brands such as Dermalogica, training sales teams for B2B retail relationships with Unilever, to brand founders, and do a lot of business coaching and workshops with them to help them increase their sales and gain market share through all channels. So I very much look at things at a top line strategic level. And I think it's really important to balance your e-commerce business with your retail distribution channels as well. So it's about how do you scale that commercial growth through your distribution channels, and also create the hype required in the market to stand out when there's so many different brands out there. How do you get that cut through and that stand out? So that's where I work with a lot of businesses, and they could be startups all the way up to turning multi-million pounds to billions in the case of some of the big global corporations. Having been a buyer, I've been pitched to thousands of times from new brands, and also sat through hundreds of strategy meetings every year from brands presenting their strategy to me as a buyer. So I know what it takes to stand out to buyers. I know what it takes to get a response from them, to get them excited to scale your business once you launch with that retailer as well. And once you've got an existing business, to make sure you're growing year on year. Because over the years, I've traded hundreds of brand suppliers and made some very quick decisions on how to maximize sales and manage underperforming brands. So that's a bit about me and in my background. So great to have a lot of you here live. Like I said, we're just introducing each other into the chat, which I will catch up at the end. Make sure you change the setting to everyone so everyone can see it, otherwise it just comes directly to me and then I can't look at it afterwards either. So please just go into the everyone setting. So what we're going to talk about today and what you're here for, the main objective is about how can you scale with global retailers. So I'm going to talk to you about what buyers look for from a new brand and how you can make a great first impression. What is forgotten 9 out of 10 times when pitching to buyers. 3 mistakes brands make when working with retailers so you can avoid them. What buyers want to know at strategy meetings, and kind of gain a real insight into how to navigate that buyer relationship. Having been one, I'm always asked about this. So I'm going to go into a bit more detail about that. I'm going to give you insight of how to navigate those relationships, but also how do you balance that retail versus D2C, and when is the right time to be approaching and communicating with buyers as the landscape is evolving. Once I've gone through, I suppose, this kind of masterclass and these key points that I want to share with you today, I'm also going to share with you how I can help you take your brand to the next level. I've got some exclusive packages to work together, which is only for people joining this webinar. I always appreciate people that join live or watch the replay, so I won't be communicating these special offers outside of this. So you will only know if you've watched this webinar. So do hang on to the end, and if it's something that you want to work together on, please do let me know that you've watched the webinar as well and you know about the special offer. And if you don't, that's cool. You're going to go away with lots of information that you'll be able to action in your business today. And then following that, we're going to be doing a Q&A as well. So please do put your questions into the chat. And yes, we will be having a replay of this as well. So you can go back and if there's anything else that you want to look at. So let's kick off. Great to see everyone using the chat. I will catch up at the end. Remember everyone to put in typing to everyone. Awesome. So what do buyers look for from a new brand? So I get this question from brands all the time. Maybe you've pitched to them, maybe you're about to pitch to them, maybe you've been pitching to them for years and already work with retailers, but you're not getting any traction with a certain retailer that you really want to launch with? And how do you make that great first impression? So buyers are very time poor. I mean, it isn't everyone, but yeah, their remit and their role is really chaotic and teams are really lean. I'm going to be talking a bit about that in a bit more detail later on. But what they really want to see when you're pitching to them is, what is your point of difference? What is your USP? I think every brand that starts out sees a gap in the market. But my key thing that I often work with brands on is, how are you really communicating that clearly, succinctly? It's got to come across to a buyer within a matter of seconds, and as well to customers as well, because if they don't get your brand immediately, they're not going to see why they need to consider looking at your brand and why is it different from the brands that they already stock. A buyer isn't going to bring in a brand that's doing exactly the same thing as something they've already got. It's just not worth their time. So they really want to see brands that are aligning to market trends, not just the trends that are happening now, but the trends that are growing, that are going to happen further down the line. And this is why I talk a lot about trends on my platforms, through LinkedIn, through my newsletter, through events, and I've got lots within my newsletter. If you're not already signed up, you'll get access to that following this as well. So it's really important to making sure you're communicating within seconds what your USP is, because that's that hook that buyer wants. But also, what are those commercial proof points that proves that your brand is going to be a commercial success with them? So a buyer is very creative. They're looking at the trends. They kind of create their own mind, and their gut reactions is almost like a crystal ball of what's going to be coming down the line in the future, and what consumers want 6, 12, 9, 2 years down the line, lots of months down the line and years. They need to be thinking about that, but they also are very commercial. They want to know how your brand is going to make money. And that's whether you're a new brand or you're new brand pitching to them, or if you're a brand that is already working with them as well. It's really important that you're going back to those two key points. So really keep that top of mind, your positioning, your USP, and commercial proof points as well. No slides today, just me. Always feel like things can get a bit slide heavy, but you will get a recording of this. So yeah, you just get to look at my face today, no problem. So what is forgotten 9 out of 10 times in pitching to buyer? So again, this is for new brands pitching, and this is also to existing brands that are already working with retailers and presenting at their strategy meetings. Honestly, 9 out of 10 times brands forget this, however established they are. And that is the commercial proof points. How do you prove that commercial value to a buyer? I see lots of brands that have potentially already created a pitch pack for buyers. And some of the key things I work on is reducing the length of it. They're often very long. And as a brand, you always have lots to say about your brand. Of course you do. So it can be quite hard to refine this. But if you have it and it's too long, it means that the key objectives and the key points of difference of your brand to what's happening in the market don't stand out enough. And the other key point is you're not proving the commercial value. So the buyer wants to understand how much your brand could potentially take within their store or their online platform. So they want to understand, what is the customer demand in the market? So how is your brand scaling? And this is particularly important if they've potentially never heard of your brand before. So they want to see, what do you already do in the market? What's your customer demand? What successes have you had? So almost think about, what's your brag list? What's all the amazing things that have happened to your brand that have been huge successes for you since you've launched, or in the past kind of year or two? And make sure you're putting those commercial proof points within the pitch pack. That will start to give an indication to the buyer to be like, okay, there's good customer demand here. This is something that's worth looking into. And honestly, 9 out of 10 times people forget to put this in the pitch pack. And that is the same if you're an existing brand and you're presenting to the buyer in a strategy meeting, which you should be doing twice a year. You should be really proactive in those meetings and going to them with a plan of how you're going to trade the business, which I'll come on to in a bit. But again, it's what are all those great things, those successes that you've had, that you can be demonstrating to the buyer, so they think, wow, okay, this brand is going somewhere, there's customer demand. Because ultimately, a buyer will only stock your brand if they see there's customer demand behind it. Occasionally, they will launch a brand that hasn't yet launched, But if that is the case, that brand is proving to them before they've launched what the marketing activation, what the trading plan is, what the campaign is going to be behind the launch of the brand. So the buyer can then add on to this kind of halo effect of this kind of, I suppose, marketing campaign that the brand will be running. So really do remember that. It's forgotten 9 out of 10 times when pitching to buyers. Again, I want to tell you the top 3 mistakes brands make when they're working with retailers as well. So whether you haven't pitched or you're already working with them, you need to be really thinking about what this long-term plan is for them, for you as well. A lot of brands think, well, I'll launch with the retailer and then that's it, it's done, fine. I'll get all of these extra sales because I'm stuck with this retailer and it'll be an overnight success because I'm on the shelves or on their website. Honestly, that is not the case. That is, getting in there is just the start. So you really need to be proactive about how you're going to build the business. And it's a two-way partnership. Buyers are looking after a lot of brands. I mean, when I was head of buying at Selfridges for beauty, there was 400 brands within the department. That was a huge amount. There was 2 buyers. I think there's probably 3 buyers now. So the remit of kind of how many brands the buyer is looking after is huge. The retailer doesn't have time to be able to support, market, trade your business. That is your responsibility as a brand, to be actively promoting your brand with the retailer through potential marketing opportunities that they're doing, independently with that retailer, with kind of different areas that they might be able to provide access to, whether that's a pop-up, whether that's staffing in store, whether that's a banner on a homepage. And also, what are you doing outside of the retailer to drive that brand awareness as well, is really, really important. Another key mistake I see a lot, and what you can do to, I suppose, to counteract this, is bombarding the buyer with emails and meeting requests with no agenda. So you may be pitching to a buyer, or you may always be working with a buyer and have an existing relationship, but you're not hearing back. Don't always expect a response from a buyer. Like I said, buying and finding new brands is probably only 10 to 15% of their role. They're also having to trade the business. They're having to lead the strategy with the marketing teams in store, online, plan campaigns. There's lots of different things that they need to be doing, as well as sourcing new brands, and also trading the existing brands that they've got. So they're completely swamped. So if you don't hear back, it's not the end of the world, but don't always expect that response from them, and find the right way to communicate with them. Don't get arsy with them if you haven't heard back. Don't just always send the same email going, I haven't heard back from you. Be proactive, saying, this is the key important thing that I'm trying to get across. If you're pitching and it's a new brand, think about what new things you can go back to them and update them with. But I would suggest don't do this more than every 3 months. If they haven't responded to your pitch the first time, it's likely that it's not right for them right then. But really think about then how you can re-communicate with them. And again, if you're an existing brand and you're not getting that traction, which can happen as well when they're really busy, is again being proactive. Is what is it that you're wanting to get back from them? Sometimes you, as brands, there's lots of things that you want answers to. People send really long emails. How can you be really targeted, and what are the 1 or 2 things that you really feel like you kind of, I suppose, need to hear back or would really help move the dial in the business, because that buyer is hugely under-resourced. So how can you be really proactive there? Another key tip is think about your distribution strategy, and my advice is don't expand too quickly. So for a number of reasons, you want to balance your retail partnerships with your D2C channels. You want them to complement and not compete with each other. You also want to have the time, the budget, the resource to be able to actively trade and market with the retailers that you stock with. So it might sound like a great position to be in, that you have the opportunity to launch with lots of different retailers, but unless you're servicing the ones that you've got effectively and you're growing with those retailers, you could be at risk of being delisted. So honestly, I believe it's better to also protect your e-commerce business and direct to consumer by scaling in a measured way, and when you have the right capacity, budgets and resources as well. So they're my kind of, I suppose, top 3 tips that I see brands make mistakes with consistently. So that assumption that your brand is going to fly off the shelves, that bombarding the buyer with communication, which I know can be a real challenge, and is something that I kind of help my clients and guide them through what is a new approach to be going to them with, because it can be frustrating if you don't hear back, particularly if you're stocked with them. Well, on both counts, if you're not stocked with them and if you are, it feels like you're stocked and you should be getting the response, but again, you don't always. And again, thinking about your distribution strategy, don't overstretch yourself with budget and resource. So what do buyers want to know at strategy meetings? So this is really key if you're stocked with retailers. You should be having a meeting with them every 6 months. And this isn't just a meeting for meeting's sake. All the big brands do this, and they have big presentations and they demonstrate to the buyers how they're going to grow the business with them in the 6 months ahead. Some brands launch with buyers, with retailers, and don't realise that this is an opportunity with the buyer. But you have to be proactive with what you're presenting to them. It isn't just going to a meeting without an agenda. So really make sure that you have a plan, which I'm going to give you a bit of a framework for now. And again, is something that I work with my clients on, kind of creating that framework, helping them prep for meetings, and then help them, I suppose, navigate how to then respond post-meeting, to make sure they have a really robust plan to help grow the business with them for the rest of the year. So those strategy meetings should be not just presentation style. Again, a lot of the huge brands can have very long presentations, which, I mean, I was talking to a huge corporate just last week, and I was saying, make those meetings shorter, keep the buyer engaged, because if you spend the whole meeting presenting to them, you get nothing back from the buyer. So you get no feedback. You come away not knowing anything different to when you went in. So making sure you keep them engaged, and it's more of an interactive session. So really start to work out which bits are the most important for the buyer to understand from that meeting. So setting and framing the beginning of the meeting about both of your objectives is really key. And another way to keep that buyer engaged in those meetings is going to them with multiple new marketing and trading ideas. So you need to, again, be presenting to them, how are you going to grow the business with them? What are all your ideas? What has worked well from the previous season, and what are you going to do that's new, that's in collaboration with them, and that you're going to do outside of them to drive the business to them? If you go to them with multiple different marketing and trading ideas, you will be able to get a steer from the buyer on which ones to focus on. And making sure you attribute a forecasted sales growth as well between the different trading activations, because it's not just putting on some marketing for marketing's sake. You need to be able to putting some sales targets against that and proving what that commercial value is. Thinking that about that buyer, they're creative and they're commercial. They want to think something's exciting and engaging for the customer, but also how much money is it going to make and what is the growth opportunity there. Another key point in those strategy meetings to keep them excited is focusing on what you're doing differently with them for the rest of the market. It's getting harder and harder within retail, and retailers are becoming more competitive than ever. The last 3 years, we've seen a huge shift in who's performing well and who's not performing well. We saw the demise of Debenhams and House of Fraser. John Lewis is in trouble. We're seeing M&S and Next absolutely flying. We've had new entrants to the market in lots of areas, particularly beauty. Debenhams moving online, kind of with a whole new platform. Next moving into beauty. Lots of online retailers growing really fast. Sephora coming to the UK. The acquisition of Cult Beauty and Look Fantastic. There's a huge amount going on and a huge amount of change. And they are all becoming more competitive than ever, and they need to have a point of difference to the other retailers to win, which is why they will want to see what you are going to do differently, what's exclusive to those retailers that you can offer them as a brand, because that will get them excited. Again, this is often forgotten by brands, and is really, really important. And again, a great reason why you don't want to have too many retailers, because you can't be doing something different all the time with all of the different retailers. And finally, demonstrate how you will achieve sales targets for your day-to-day trading. So how are you going to overachieve the sales that you reached last year? And how are you going to develop a joint trading plan so you reach the KPIs that are set by that buyer? So what are the sales that they want to achieve? And again, this is about that communication, having that kind of that meeting that's kind of two-way and understanding your objectives and their objectives at the beginning. So how do you navigate the buyer relationship? So as I keep saying and weaving throughout this, is buyers are often creative and commercial. So making sure at all times you're playing to these 2 points. They want that creativity, that excitement of your point of difference, your USP of the brand, how you're going to activate it, how you're going to market it, what is going to excite customers at the end of the day. But also how are you going to improve and increase the sales with your business, with them. So it's really, really important that you're demonstrating this to them. Put yourself into their shoes. Seek to understand their role, their pressures, and their KPIs. And the more you try and put themselves in their shoes, I know it can be frustrating dealing with buyers. I was one. I hear it day in, day out how annoying they are. I've also dealt with buyers when I was as a sales director role, and I guide clients all the time through these buyer relationships where they get frustrated that they're not hearing back. But there's a reason you're not hearing back. You're not top of the list. And buyers are very much focusing on their top performing brands to help them grow more, and their underperforming brands probably to either try and scale them back to a positive growth, or to delist them and exit them and look for new brands. So sometimes when you're in the middle, actually that isn't the end of the world if you're not hearing back, because you're not, I mean, great news if you're at the top, but then also maybe you're not at the bottom as well. So, but you still need to be making sure you're growing that business. So think about how else you can start to do this. So again, I suppose those proactive, I suppose confrontational communication with them, where it's thinking about short, succinct emails, trying to get a quick response. Is there anyone else you can be talking in different teams to help support this? Yeah, and again, just kind of having that communication with them, but don't always expect an answer back. And then when you do have meetings with them, making sure they're proactive, making sure you've got an agenda, and making sure you know what the actions are from the end of it and what you can be doing to help grow that business. Because like I said, it's as much your responsibility about scaling your brand within that business to help the buyer scale their business as a whole. So it's really important to be thinking about how you're going to do that. And then particularly when you do have meetings, never overrun. Keep to that agenda. If you could ever try and make a meeting quicker than possible, quicker than I suppose the allotted time, they will remember that, and you're much more likely to get a second meeting. But if you overrun, if you're presenting for too long, if you're not going to them with lots of kind of different ideas to be able to get some feedback from them, then they are going to find those meetings with you challenging. That's going to eat into the time of all the other things they've got going on. So it's just as much about how you build that relationship with the buyer as it is as kind of how you're trading your business as well, because they go hand in hand, and that will kind of help you build the business and that relationship going forward. So retail versus D2C. I mean, this is a question I get asked all the time. And we had the big e-commerce boom over the last, particularly in the pandemic. It was bubbling along before that. And then there was that huge boom. And obviously e-commerce is still super important. It's a very important sales channel. But as a lot of brands are now finding, it's getting harder to raise investment in that space. The cost of customer acquisition is absolutely through the roof. So to acquire a customer, it's not an easy route anymore. It's not as profitable route, and it can be really expensive. The landscape is evolving with consumer behavior. We have a high level of digital fatigue, where we are bombarded with information all the time. If I said to you, what was the last thing you saw on Instagram if you'd just come off scrolling for half an hour, you probably couldn't remember, because we are bombarded with so much information. There's that craving for human a human interaction as well from the customer's point of view. So physical retail is back after the pandemic. It's a great touch point. It's a great way to explore and discover brands as well. But then also e-commerce and digital is, although is not on the same growth trajectory it was in the pandemic, it is still growing, but we have seen it plateau. But what is so important about the digital channels is as a research touch point. So many consumers are researching so much more before they go into a physical shop as well. So it's really important to have that digital presence, but making sure it's really content rich, and they can find the information that they want at the touch of a button. So retail versus D2C, I don't believe it should be one or the other. It should be a very holistic partnership, and it should be a happy marriage. And I see this a lot with, particularly as teams grow and in the larger corporate teams, that the sales team for retailers and the e-commerce teams are separate, and it's almost a competition. Which it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be a competition. It should be collaboration, because you don't want to be competing with your e-commerce platform with your retailers. So how can this be more of a partnership? How can you bring those teams together, and making sure you've got a really proactive strategy when you're working with those retailers that also complements what you're doing on your e-commerce business? Because if you're constantly discounting on your e-commerce business, how are you going to compete with the retailers? If you're with too many retailers that are always discounting, every retailer's got a different discount every weekend on a different platform, then also that's going to cannibalize your e-commerce business, for example. So again, how do you start to bridge this, and I think really make this more of a, I suppose, cohesive offer? And again, another key point around this is, where does your customers want to shop? So what are the right distribution channels for your brand? And also, when you're launching with retailers, what's an order of approach? So very much so you can think about your positioning, and there is your kind of luxury retailers, there's your kind of masstige, and then there's your mass, and then a lot of times your marketplaces like Amazon. So really think about what is the order of approach on this, because very often it's easy to go into a more high-end retailer and then expand into further distribution that's much more mass. It's very hard to go the other way around. So again, this really depends on your product category, your price point. If you're selling tea bags, for example, then it's absolutely right to go into as many retailers as possible, because it's quite unlikely people are going to come directly to your website just to buy tea bags. They're going to want to put that into their grocery basket in a physical shop, in an online shop, on a weekly basis. So then that's why it's great to go to lots of different retailers. But then if you're a premium skincare brand, then perhaps you just want to be launching with kind of one key retailer and the more luxury end to start with. So again, it really depends on your product category, and your price point, and your long-term vision for the brand as well, is really important. So thinking about that distribution strategy that really helps balance that kind of retail versus the e-commerce as well. And where that customer wants to shop, at the end of the day, if they're thinking of your brand, where are they shopping? Where do they want to go? And what will their first touch point be as well? Very often, retail can also help accelerate your e-commerce growth, because it will provide a halo effect of organic traffic, something that may be discovered with a retailer. They will then start following you on social media. They may sign up to your email list. So there's then an opportunity to convert them into e-commerce. And vice versa as well. So this really should be about how you are just sharing with the customer as much as possible how easy it is for them to purchase your product. So make it about the customer, not about the sales channels. And then the key thing that I suppose I wanted to wrap up on before kind of we go into Q&A, because I know there's always so many questions about this as well. I wanted to leave a good chunk of time for that, and really get your steer about what you want to learn today. Is timing to get in front of retail buyers, whether you're pitching or you're presenting strategy meetings. So if you think about, I suppose, two different halves of the year and the seasons, the buyers will be planning their 2025. I know, can you believe it? It's only summer 24. They will be planning what is going to launch in the first half of 2025. They will be planning this from September this year. So September and October are their big busy times where they're meeting with all of their existing brands to plan out and see what their strategy is. So the brands will be going to them and saying, this is our strategy, this is what our new products are coming, this is our marketing activations, this is how we're going to grow the business. By them having all of that information from their existing brands, the buyer is then able to go and plan the budgets with their merchandising and finance team. They're able to go, okay, we're seeing these trends within the market. We think this area of the business is going to grow. We want to give more space online or more visibility to campaigns in this area. We think this brand's going to do much better. So they'll have a top line budget that they're working towards, but they'll also be building their sales plans and sales forecasts from the bottom up, based on that information that they get from the brands. So as a result, they'll also be looking at the brands that are performing well, the brands that they want to do more with, the brands that aren't doing well, that they want to exit at the end of 2024 and delist. And again, once they've kind of had this review, they'll also be, with all these brands, they'll also be thinking, okay, what are these other brands that I want to launch and want to stock? Generally, buyers will have a hit list that they already know. They will be getting hundreds of pictures a week from new brands. So what's really important, as well as you pitching directly to them, is that you're creating a buzz in the market and customer demand, because the best foot to be on is if that buyer comes to you, because you're creating that hype in the market. So obviously it's kind of a two-prong approach. It's going to them directly, but ultimately, if that buyer's heard of you, you're really winning. If you think about a customer needs to see your brand multiple different times before it builds trust, it's the same with a buyer. So if you're pitching to them cold and they may never have seen your brand anywhere before, then it's really important that you're working on how else they could see you. And it isn't just about doing things that are industry facing. It's really about, because the buyer doesn't care about the industry facing things, they care that there's customer demand. So how are you focusing on building that awareness with customers? Because it's the customers that will be buying from those retailers. So that's what's really important to them. So the reason I'm doing this webinar now is to try and help set you up over the summer to be able to ready to pitch to those buyers in September time. So there'll be a super busy time for them. So if you can get in front of them end of August, that's great, because it'll be a bit quieter. They then will go into these lots of heavy meetings September and October, and they'll be making final decisions kind of end of October time for 2025. So this is a perfect window, these next 6 weeks. A lot of people are much more quieter at this time. A lot of people go away, so potentially you haven't got as much on your plate. But it's a great time to be preparing for those strategy meetings and also be preparing to pitch as well, is what's really important. So those are your key timings that you need to be thinking about right now to be considered to launch your brand in 2025 or grow your business with those key retailers in 2025. So those are my key points today. I'm really excited to share these offers with you today about how you can work with me if you want to go further on this and you want some extra support. So I'm going to quickly share a few slides now. It will take a few minutes, and then after that we're going to go into the Q&A. So we can dive into that straight after this. So I will just share my screen, just one moment. So here we go. So there's two ways that I work with brands, is helping brands launch with global retailers. So how do you learn everything that you need to know about buyers, about how they operate, what they want to know, those pitch deck reviews, or how do you scale with existing retailers? So how are you proactive with those strategy meetings, with your trade and marketing plan for what you should be planning now is for 2025. So the first option is if you want to launch your brand and you're not stocked with any retailers yet. So I have an online strategy training program where I have distilled 20 years of knowledge and 15 years of working in buying of everything you need to know about launching with retailers. It's a proven strategy framework that's seen brands launch in Selfridges, Cop Beauty, Harrods, Fenwick, internationally as well in the US. And also find international distributors and partnerships around the globe. There's a lot of things that I go through in there, and it's great that you came here today, but quite simply an hour is not enough to be able to tell you everything I need to know. But I have distilled that into this program which is what a buyer looks for and how to stand out to get their attention. There are more brands than ever out there, which is crazy. How do you prove your brand is worth launching? Again, that uniqueness, that financial opportunity that a buyer really needs to see to, I suppose, take action and get a meeting with you. How to create a distribution strategy that's right for your business and also leverages your direct-to-consumer channels. Create that prioritized approach, who to contact and how to find their contact details. What you need to send to buyers in their first meeting. As I said earlier, often brands send way too much information. They very often forget the commercial proof points, which you obviously now know. There's a lot more detail in this program on that. What those buyers and retailers' expectations are, how you can do the financial planning from that, and making sure you've kind of got enough margin and you're setting aside budget for what they need. And ultimately, how do you build brand awareness outside of contacting them directly, which attracts the buyers and ultimately attracts new customers as well. And what to focus upon if you don't hear back straight away, because all honesty, you might not hear back straight away, and it's more than likely that you won't hear back straight away. And this is when a lot of brands give up. But it's the start of a process in a relationship. And I've worked with brands that after 4 months have got a listing, but then they don't launch for another 6 months. I've had brands that it's taken them a year of consistent nurturing and not hearing back from multiple retailers until they've launched with a retailer. So it can take time, but you have to have that patience and you have to hold that knowledge and resilience. So there's 3 ways to access this package, and again I'll put into the chat some more information about this and how you can kind of read a lot more about it. I have this online strategy framework which like I say, lots of brands have followed and had huge success with, where you can watch it at your own pace. It's got worksheets, it's got masterclasses, it's got detailed course notes and the exact strategy framework to follow. And then I also offer this with pitch deck reviews and with one-to-ones as well. And what I'm really excited about, because I always love it when people come and join the webinars and listen, is if you sign up by the end of July, you can receive a bonus one-to-one with me as well. So that's extra on top of this if you sign up before the end of July. Like I said, I'm not communicating this to anyone other than the people that have listened to this. So if you're here or watching on the replay, you know. And then the other option is for brands if you are already working with large retailers. Again, it can be just as frustrating and not hearing back. And I work with a number of brands on how to maximize and grow their retailer relationships. And actually, I've had a client that I've been working with recently, and she had an 80-20 split where 80% of her sales were coming from e-commerce last year versus 20% from retailers. And both really flipping the focus and how much time and energy she was doing, she has now doubled her size of her overall business, and she now has 90% of that business that's coming from retailers. So she doubled the overall revenue of her business because e-commerce has slowed down. It's getting more expensive for her to grow. She wanted to stop digital marketing and has really focused on the wholesale business, which means although it's not those trickle of regular orders every day, that she's then getting those bigger orders where she's able to actually actively scale the business and getting much more presence in front of much more customers as well, because she's getting those much larger orders. So when you're scaling with large retailers, you need to be proactive, going to them with strategy deck reviews and feedbacks. Again, developing marketing commercial ideas to increase sales and profit. And I help people understand and navigate those buyer relationships because they are frustrating. Even if you've worked with a buyer for 20 years, they're frustrating. Even if you've been a buyer and you work with a buyer, it's frustrating. That's the one common theme I can tell you. Not to put you off, because it's definitely worth it when the revenue comes through. So I have 2 packages here. If you've got a strategy deck ready and you want me to review that, I will do a strategy deck review and also a power hour with you, which we'll do in the space of 1 month. Or we've also got a 3-month package where we can really help you prepare for that meeting. We can then have a debrief after that meeting, and I'll give you kind of ongoing strategy deck reviews and kind of any questions and communication queries you have when you start to hear back from the buyer, because that can often be a point like, well, I've heard back, but I don't know how to reply, or how do I be more proactive, or I haven't heard back, what do I send? Again, both of those have got some bonus sessions if for watching this. So I thought I'd share again some of the client results I've had. Basically, this is, I suppose, like having me in your back pocket. Some of the things that I've managed to do quite quickly with brands is from declining year-on-year sales. Within 3 months, pull the sales back. This was a major brand that was in risk of getting their space reduced. They had a great space in the middle of a department store, and it was in double-digit decline and had been for a couple of years. And the buyer was like, right, if you don't sort this out, we're gonna have to move you and reduce your space. So we put a very robust action plan together to be able to do that and manage to pull back. So they were trading up and then had a plan to pull back the deficit for the rest of the year and maintain their space. I've helped negotiate improved terms and marketing support. Often retailers will come to brands and ask for lots of different marketing support, so I help them navigate which are the right ones for them, so it aligns with their budget as well. How to approach tricky conversations with buyers and have a win-win solution. Maybe you have to negotiate a price increase, or maybe you've got stock problems. There's some tricky conversations that you need to have sometimes, so it can help you navigate those. And ultimately save you time and money by making the right decisions. So if this is interesting to you, please do come and find out more. You can take advantage of the webinar offer if you signed up by the end of July, end of July, sorry, and you can receive those bonus one-to-ones with me. And so yeah, drop me an email. I'm going to put into the chat more information about both. We can set up the payment, we can book in the bonus session, and we can make your retail goals a reality. And I'm just as excited as you when you hear back from that buyer, believe me. Or if you want to know, not sure which one's right for you, then we can book a discovery call. And again, I'm going to put that discovery call link in the chat. So yeah, I've got a few slots this week and a few more next week. So please do get in touch if there's something you're interested in. I only have limited capacity of one-to-one clients to take on as well. So do be sure to put that in soon.